Lunar Expeditions podcast. All right, we're here. It's been a big week.
Oh, it's been massive, hasn't it? Yeah, huge. You can still feel the energy of it.
I know. It's. I feel like it's just tapering a bit. Obviously, for us, with the school holidays coming to an end and back to work, it's been. But I think it's hit a lot of people. This eclipse. Obviously, you've travelled to town for the eclipse, the 2023 eclipse here in Exmouth, and it's been a big experience.
Oh, it's huge. I mean, even for those who weren't in Exmouth for it, I've got an idea it's impacted the whole planet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. For people that were not really expecting it to have an impact, it really has impacted them.
Yeah, I talked to a few people out in the surf and they went, I didn't know what all the fuss was going to be about, but wow.
Yeah.
And you can see they just felt the whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I guess it would be tricky to explain how that happens. Like, in your experiences, what would trigger that in people? Do you think our closeness are relative to?
Well, we're talking about the three major bodies in our lives, which one of them we live on, it's called the Earth, and the other one is the source of everything that we are, which is the Sun, and the other one's this little rocky world that regulates things here on Earth as it goes around the Earth. And that little regulating body, which is the Moon, interacts with the Earth, the Sun and the Moon. Well, the three of those bodies interact with each other in a regular cycle. And, that lunar cycle is a very powerful one for all of us here on Earth, whether we think it is or not.
Yeah, for sure. Because I know, you surf, you meditate, you ride your bike. I mean, from what I can gather, you're quite a spiritual guy as well. Linking that with your knowledge of astronomy and that, there's a lot of stuff people make up or they think they know about the links. How do you go matching your experiences with your knowledge?
Well, it is experiences. I mean, when you live with that cycle in a conscious way, I mean, every month that moon passes between us and the sun.
Yeah.
Most times it misses the sun, but it's still there. So at every new moon, we've got that, at least a taste of that energy. But, if we happen to get a new moon at a thing that's called the moon's node, we get an eclipse and it's a direct hit and it's literally an interruption of our source. So the moon blocks out the sun, in this case for 1 minute. And I guess I see it as a computer reset. It's like, okay, let's cut the source off completely, especially here in Exmouth. And anywhere on that path that started somewhere between Cape Town and Perth, came up across the Indian Ocean, hit Australia at only Exmouth, and continued on to Timor-Leste and Papua, and then out into the Marshall Islands. So anywhere on that path would have particular impact, but it's certainly something that affects the whole planet.
Yeah, it does. And I was thinking about it the other day. It could be like one of the only natural events that can stop people en masse, like it did. People go all over the places for animal migrations to see these amazing natural occurrences. But for the amount of people that came here, and I mean, next year there's going to be one go across America. So obviously, it's going to have potential to be seen live by more people. Yeah,
for sure.
I mean, it just stops.
Yeah, I haven't really looked that one up yet. Is that the Mexico one?
Yeah, I think it's going to be, Mexico and sort of Texas, and there's going to be an annular and a total, about 6 months apart, there's going to be sort of two.
Okay.
So they're lucky.
Yeah, in the same area?
I think so, yeah. I think Texas will get them both. But we spoke to a guy the other day who was here from New Jersey, and he said he's going to go to Mexico for it.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
That'll be really good.
Yeah. It's pretty easy to see how people follow them once you've had an experience of it. Yeah,
that's right. I mean, people who've never even experienced anything like that before, never even thought about anything like that, if you find yourself under the shadow of the moon, you want to do it again.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people here saw it just purely because it was in our backyard.
Yeah.
But I know now there's even people looking at 2028,
Yeah.
getting up to the Kimberley. They're addicted. It's almost like you're hooked once you've had it.
Well, if it's just there, you're mad if you don't.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I tell people. If you're anywhere near that line of totality, crawl on your hands and knees over broken glass to get to it.
Yeah.
It's that worth it.
Yeah, you definitely can't emphasise enough how an incredible event that it is to be witnessed. And I like looking at it is one thing, but I've sort of started calling it experiencing it, because it is a whole.
Yeah.
It's a whole body experience. That feeling you get when it starts closing over and the sky goes dark, and then you see it happening. It's It's a full experience.
Yeah, you can see it in everyone's eyes and in everyone's faces. Everyone's.
Yeah.
It's like an opening that just comes with it.
Yeah.
And how do we explain that? I don't know. I just accept it.
Yeah. And I really liked, I came to your speech the other day for your book launch, which we'll get to a little bit later on. But I really enjoyed, someone asked you sort of what are your expectations from the 2028 one, because here it was, I think, about a minute or just over a minute in the right places.
Yep.
And then you were saying the one in the Kimberley is going to be about 5 minutes of sort of totality.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, so 5 minutes will be epic. I mean, what we experienced here in a minute, for me it was over in about, it seemed like 10 seconds.
Yeah.
But I did see a shorter one in South Australia back in 2012
Yep.
that lasted 33 seconds.
Yeah.
And that was just as worth it.
Oh, absolutely. I think, anything.
So to get 5 minutes is wow.
Yeah.
And where the path that we experienced here was 40 kilometres wide,
Yeah.
the one in 2028 is going to be 230 kilometres wide.
Wow.
So that puts us, particularly if you get near the centre line of it, you're deeper inside that shadow too.
Yeah.
So darkness will be even more.
The umbra, I just learnt, was a word I learnt the other day of the moon. It's the darkest part of the shadow.
That's right.
Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's the direct
Yeah.
shadow touching down.
Yeah.
Whereas the penumbra is, the kind of scattered light that happens where you have a part of the sun blocked out. But
You're still getting a bit of light enough to cast like
That's
a
right.
sort of translucent sort of shadow.
yeah, so you're only going to. All of Australia got the penumbral shadow,
Yeah.
which we also call a partial eclipse.
Yeah.
Same thing.
And it did something to our shadows up here. It was weird how even like a pinhole, you could see the crescent shape and it wasn't like you could see the eclipse happening through a hole, and shadows look bizarre. What happens to shadows when you get that effect?
Well, a pinhole camera produces a direct image of the sun.
Yeah.
And, even a hole in a tin roof, when you see that circle on the ground in your holy roof, or, under your holy roof, that's a direct image of the sun. You take a bite out of that sun with the moon, you see that.
Yeah.
And it is a direct image. And, some of the photos all over Facebook and other places of, the shadows under the trees with the crescents everywhere, they're just beautiful. It's so beautiful.
Yeah. It's like your mind's playing tricks on you.
Yeah.
Even I think we're about maybe 20, 25 minutes out from the eclipse, and you could take your sunnies off, and it was...
Yeah.
You didn't need them, but it was still daylight. But it's like you still had them on. It was surreal. And I think I saw someone else post a picture of a colander.
Yeah.
And every hole in the
great.
colander.
Oh, I love that trick.
Cool.
What a great trick.
Yeah. But we were talking on the Kimberley, the 5 minutes. I know from, like you said, for a minute for me, it was over. And I think the whole time I just stared at the eclipse itself in just total awe for a minute.
Yeah.
Where 5 minutes I might actually look around and see what else is going on and absorb it, a bit deeper and a bit further. So
yeah. Well, even before totality, one of the guests that I was with spotted Venus,
Yeah.
So, the sun was still shining and there's Venus bright as in the sky.
Yeah.
And then we found Jupiter right next to the sun and the moon, and I didn't even have time to go looking for Saturn, but it was there too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all of those bright planets showed
They came up
so easily.
Yeah, we saw them. And my daughter, who little Cova, she loves the planets, and she saw it. And it kind of threw me because seeing Venus in the northeast of the sky, I'm used to seeing it at night out to the northwest. And I was like, that can't be Venus because it's not where it should be. But, of course, it was, 11:30 in the morning and 6 hours earlier than what I'm used to seeing it in the other part of the sky.
Yeah,
so.
and it was exactly where it's supposed to be.
Yeah, that's right. You just can't see it.
That's it.
You'd be worried if it was somewhere else.
Or, if you point to the sun and if you point to Venus with your arms, that angle between your arms will be relatively consistent for, from one night to the next at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what I set the guess up with we're on the True North too.
Yeah.
We looked at Venus that evening and I went, hey, see the angle between my arms? Let's have a look for Venus there tomorrow, and it's going to be down there below the sun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty cool stuff.
Yeah.
We've had a good week. We've had family here, and the town's just been buzzing leading up to it. Even we've had telescopes out and showing the kids and watching the sort of SpaceX launches. And we had a rocket launch last week with ESA launching the JUICE rocket, sending up to look at Jupiter's moon. So it's been a big week.
Yeah, it's been huge.
But one that we definitely won't forget in a hurry.
Oh, still reverberating for sure.
Yeah. So I guess for you coming here and having the chance to speak to you was amazing, because you have an ability with, whether it's through your background or just your experiences in life, is how you can explain what we see in almost real time, or like you say, in a conscious way, through observation. I'm sure most of it is purely just through seeing and recording. But where did that all start for you? Where did the interest start, and then thinking, okay, I can take this further and take it to people?
Well, I didn't even know that I could take it to people. It was something that I tell people I was pushed into, basically. Yeah. And they go, "What do you mean you were pushed?" And it's like, well, I figured a few things out about the stars myself. When I first went to Broome, which is 40 odd years ago, I worked as a pearl diver. And being a pearl diver in Broome means working with the tides. We've got 10-metre tides. They're a very obvious thing. They're a part of our life, a part of our community. They're just there. And of course, they're governed by the moon, or more correctly, a relationship between the Earth, the Sun and the moon. Yeah. So working as a diver, we'd work 10 days over the neap tides and have 4 days off over the springs. So, even our working week was regulated by that. And we used to have to park 16-foot boats at Town Beach in Broome. Big flat beach, water. The tide goes out, it's kilometres out. Tide comes in all the way up onto the beach. In springs anyway. In neaps there's less water movement, but we'd work 7 miles out in Roebuck Bay. That was where the pearl farm was for Broome pearls, and it was a bottom farm in those days. There was no floats or any of that sort of stuff.
Okay.
It was all early days of pearl farming, and we had 4 divers out there, and we'd be up and down doing half a dozen dives a day, just looking after that shell. Picking it up off the bottom, bringing it up to the technicians to operate on, dropping it back down at the end of the day, which is, there's a whole pile of other stories around that.
Yeah, but it's a lot of work. We were up in Broome in September and we did the Willie Creek Pearl Tour, and it's it sounds amazing, but the day we were there, it wasn't exactly ideal, and the boats were still going out and the divers were still diving.
Yeah.
It's like, okay.
Yeah. Well, sometimes the visibility there, you can't even see your hand in front of your face.
Yeah.
And yet you've got work to do.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So, and we used to have to park our boats at Town Beach. And we'd have to figure out where to park them so they'd be floating the next morning. Yeah. And if you got that wrong, you'd either have to drag that heavy boat across the mud flat, or you'd have to swim out to it, which on a cold July morning was equally as bad.
Yeah, not much fun. Yeah. And like, how big a size boats are we talking?
We're talking 16-foot tinnies.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah, sure. And we used to leave all the dive gear in them in those days, and nobody touched them. So dive hoses and compressors and all that sort of stuff in the boat. Yeah. And they were heavy. So I got really good at looking at the moon and telling you where the tide was.
Just by looking at the moon?
Just simply because I was using that information every day.
Yeah.
So, it's just a part of my natural every day. I look at the moon, okay, we're going to put the boat, put it there, and if you got it right, you could just wade out into ankle-deep water and take off again in the morning. And that was the idea of it.
That would have been pretty fun, having fun with your co-workers, being able to read and judge that.
Yeah, well, we're all pretty good at it.
Okay.
That's just what we did.
Just one of the things, yeah.
Yeah, it's just, anyone who works in that industry.
Yeah.
And they're doing that every day, you pick it up.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's
so cool. I could look at the moon basically and tell you what time it was going to be high tide that day and how big it was going to be. And, I can still sort of do that, but I'm nowhere near as good as I used to be because I'm not using it every day.
Yeah, it's one of those things like, the more you use it or you use it less and you lose that sort of ability, sure.
But if I had to do it, even for another neep, it'd be like, okay, it's all back again.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that sort of put me, it gave me a very good relationship, I guess you could say, with the Earth, the Sun and the Moon. And that spatial understanding of what was going on there was just something that came fairly easily to me. When I'd finished being a diver, I went and worked around the Kimberley on cattle stations because I thought that'd be fun. I got bent a few times diving. I went, that'll do, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
So I went and played on cattle stations with bulldozers and graders and road trains and earth-moving gear, and, I fixed those things and operated them. And doing that sort of work in the Kimberley means sleeping on the ground in a swag underneath one of those beautiful, clear Kimberley skies that we get.
Yeah.
And, I didn't even set out to learn the stars, but they were there, and so was I. And gradually we got to know each other, and I started to figure out some things, some really simple things like, the Earth turns. And if you watch the sky, you can see it turn. So, that it became a reality in my life that the Earth turns. And, I know everyone knows the Earth turns. But when you actually see it and experience it for yourself, that's something completely different again.
Yeah, and when, like you say, when you do work those things out and you can see it and you start working things out, it's a pretty powerful thing you can give yourself.
Yeah, it is. It's a process that we take ourselves through that isn't sort of openly available in anywhere else unless you do it for yourself. Yeah,
and giving yourself the time to study it every night, like you say.
Yeah, well, I was busy doing, I'd pretty much roll my swag out and lay back and look at the stars for 10 minutes and go to sleep. So that was my study, 10 minutes. That's all I needed. It's like, 10 minutes. Actually, I'd never go to sleep until I'd seen a shooting star.
Yep.
And the longest I ever had to wait was 10 minutes.
Wow.
So that was, pretty much how that worked.
Yeah. And in those areas where there's not huge amounts of light pollution.
Oh, no, we're out on the edge of the Great Sandy Desert.
Yeah.
In the country down there below Fitzroy Crossing and Nookanbar and Christmas Creek Station, Cherubin, Gogo. Yeah, way out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, we did similar stuff when I was early sort of mining exploration and small crews. I think we used to have a fire back in the day and we'd turn the camp generator off and sit back and look at the stars. It was pretty magical. Yeah. And luckily one of our geologists was actually a photographer, and he liked to do the time lapse of the stars and that.
Using film.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where we learnt about, the South Celestial Pole and all of that sort of stuff. So it was pretty cool. Even in the space of a couple of minutes you could see how much you'd moved. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's how simple it is. Even in a few minutes you can actually see the Earth turning if you know what to look for.
Yeah.
And those time lapses of the South Celestial Pole are a great way to illustrate that.
Yeah. Yeah, we've still got one of our camps somewhere set up with, with that happening. It's one of my favourite photos still in the album.
Yeah, it's great.
So from that, you started getting into it a bit more, and then your first book sort of came from that because you do the tours, or was it just stuff you took in? Did you have plans to start writing, or
not at all?
Like I say, you were pushed into it, right? So you no doubt telling your friends about this sort of thing that was blowing their minds. And they were like, okay.
The first book came out in 2016, and I started the shows in 1995.
Yeah.
So it took me 21 years to write the book.
Yeah.
And pretty much from the first night that I presented, people were asking me, "Have you got a book on what you just told us?" It's like, no. And even my mate Peter Birch, he was second in charge at Perth Observatory.
Yeah.
And when he retired from there, he came and worked with me. And all of the crew at the Perth Observatory have been great supporters of me and Astro Tours from the beginning.
Yeah.
They encouraged me to the max, and some of them would come up and work with me in the off season because when it's cloudy in Perth, that's beautiful here.
Yeah.
So Peter, he said to me one night after he'd retired, he was working with me for a season. He said, "Quickie, who wrote your script?" And it's like, "Peter, there's no script. That's just stuff that I've figured out."
Yeah.
That has been powerful in my life that I see when I share it with other people, and they tell me back again that it's powerful in their lives too. Yeah.
Must be pretty special.
It is really special.
Yeah.
And it's as simple as that that initial watching, which you did too, of the Earth turning by watching, a time lapse of the South Celestial Pole. And, that's one aspect of what's going on in the sky. If you look in the north, you'll see another aspect. And if you take in that whole sky, you'll end up knowing around which axis the Earth is turning. And that's, it's a reality. And with a knowing of that axis of rotation of the Earth, you can teach yourself all the rest. Because that's the basics. If you haven't got that, you've got nothing.
Yeah.
All you've got is theory, and you can fill your head up with as much theory as you like, and, well, that's not something I do.
Yeah.
I'd rather do something that I can use in my life.
Yeah, work on the evidence and the facts, which I think you've sort of mentioned before, yeah. And that's exactly what your first book, Earth Turning Consciousness, is about, is just those early discoveries and, learning all about what you can see and how it affects everything, right?
Yeah, well, it's the basics, really.
Yeah.
If the Earth turning and the Earth going around the sun, with an understanding of those two things, and by an understanding I mean a conscious awareness, experiencing of that, which is what that seems to be my job, is to lead people into that, and to watch them while they leap off the edge of that for themselves.
Yeah,
and so I mean, I was asked for that book right from the start, and it took me 20 years to get around to writing it. Actually, I probably wrote it earlier than that and had a couple of rejections, and then realised that it was important for me to get that key information out into a book. So, I went to the trouble of compiling it. I read all the books about writing books and got some advice, and some very good advice I got was, write the book from the beginning to the end. In other words, don't touch it. Don't go back and correct that bit or correct that spelling mistake. Just write it from the beginning all the way till the end, and then go back and revise whatever you need to. And that was good advice.
Put it out there. Just instead of sort of getting paralysed in the thought process of how to go about it, just get it done to start with. Yeah, that's good, and that's quite relative to a lot of things that we talk about. And got some other guests who are lined up who are very similar things like I've got successful friends that I speak to them even about podcasting. So just start. Yeah. Just start.
Yeah.
And work the rest out as you go. You don't have to know it all from the beginning. So
no, people only want to know what you do know. They don't want to know what you don't know.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Because we spoke about that and the book, and it was a bit of a journey getting that one done. Turned into, along with your TV show, the Stargazers Guide to the Cosmos, which was the hand in hand, the same sort of theory, but in a TV show form from that book.
Yeah, I mean, the book was published in 2016, and the timing was beautiful because I got an approach from the BBC in 2017, or actually late 2016, I think it was, and they asked me to be involved as the practical astronomer with Brian Cox on the Stargazing Live series, and when that first email came, it was like, really? Are you guys for real? Yeah. And so anyway, with correspondence between myself and the series director, Paul King, we started to get to know each other quite well and realised that we could make this thing work. And so I ended up in Coonabarabran, Siding Spring Mountain, actually, up near Coonabarabran in central New South Wales, with 150 TV crew, and Brian Cox and a whole bunch of other scientists who were there for the show. And it was quite a beautiful thing to be involved with. I mean, even before we got there, the BBC had sort of flown me around different places to make some small films up to Townsville to talk about the moon's effect on the coral spawning. Yeah,
I did see that just recently, actually. That was really cool.
And, had me talking to Dr. Noel Nannup, who's a Noongar elder, about songlines and how they relate to the sky. So, I got to travel around making those little films for them, which was really quite a treat too.
Yeah, it would have been from laying back in the swag, falling asleep for looking at the stars for 10 minutes to, making a production for the BBC. It would have almost been a bit of a pinch yourself moment there, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, there was a lot in between there too. I mean, running the live shows in Broome. Yeah. Very quickly, I gained a grassroots organic following of people who were coming to me from all over the world because, I guess I seem to be able to get people to think for themselves. And when people think for themselves, they go away and they talk to other people about what they're thinking about. And then those people come and see me, and then those people come and see me. And so, it's been quite an organic growth over the years, but it's always been a very strong, a strong forum that I've carried in Broome. I mean, we were running 6 nights a week for 20 odd years.
Yeah.
With, groups of 30, 40, 50, 60 people at a time. And I don't actually want to run 6 nights a week anymore. I mean, it was great when I did it, but these days we run 3 nights a week, but we're doing 100 plus people every night.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've got a lot more gear. We've got a bigger setup, stage, big PA, and lots of big telescopes. A crew all working for me. So, and the audiences are seated in swivel boat seats, so they can turn around and look at the stars in different directions. And it's kind of fun.
Epic. Yeah, I saw a few of your photos from the eclipse when you're at, I think you're at Long Island on the True North.
That's right. Yeah.
And even the telescopes that you had set up down there, I mean, you had a heap of telescopes just set up on the beach. It would have been a mission just bringing them in.
Yeah.
Getting them from Broome to here, onto the boat, onto the island. I mean, that's a job in itself.
Logistics have been my forte for the last month or so.
Yeah.
Well, actually for the last 3 or 4 months, but yeah.
Getting ready for all that, yeah.
Yeah, getting ready for that, making sure things are in place and driving those telescopes down and dropping them in Dampier where we had to get on the boat.
Yeah.
Continuing that drive down to Exmouth and leaving the troopy here, and then having to fly to Perth to fly back to Dampier to get on the boat to run the 5-day trip with the eclipse, and then chopper off the boat into Exmouth to present that night at the yacht club.
Well, actually, just speaking on the True North, you guys had quite an experience. I think you'd come down the coast of Ningaloo. Yeah. And you were giving a presentation on the True North. You want to explain that one a little bit?
Well, I was in the saloon with all the guests, and we were kind of geeing ourselves up for the eclipse, which was in 2 days' time. And next thing you know, Jason Simpson comes over who lives next door, by the way.
Yep.
where I'm staying, and Jason comes over and goes, "Hey, whale sharks off the starboard bow," and it was like abandoned presentation, charged, let's go. And we got out on the bow of the True North too, and there was just a whole big mob of whale sharks out there off the starboard bow, and it's like, and everyone was just elated. And if you listen to even the soundtrack of the videos that we all took, because everyone had their cameras out, and the sound of everyone just being so joyful is enough. And yet we all got footage of these whale sharks too, and it was like, there must be 10 of them out there. Well, hang on, there's another mob there. There must be 20, and look, there's more over there. There must be 30 or 40, and Jason and I reckon there was probably 100.
Yeah. Colby, Jason's wife, with then obviously next door friends.
Yeah.
She showed us the footage. I think as it was kind of happening, maybe Jay sent it straight through, and we're watching it that night. We just couldn't believe the numbers, because you used to watching them go up and down the coast during the day.
Yeah.
But to see them, at night, I think it was the sun was setting. They were almost swimming back on themselves and feeding.
Yeah.
And they were bumping into each other and all sorts of things.
Yeah, interacting with each other and coming up mouths open, feeding, swimming through something and eating it.
I think there's like a manta ray jumped out the water.
Yeah, there was big oceanic manta rays that were amongst them as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it was epic.
I mean, that's a life-changing experience in itself, let alone being in the wake of a solar eclipse.
And I think we pretty much stopped seeing them because it got dark.
Yeah.
We just ran out of light to see them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, up here to have a look as well on on what was happening, no doubt.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, they're a big part of. They brought a lot of energy to us, and no doubt they were here for what we were here for too.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess, and on that side of it, and you sort of touched on the reef before, on the spawning, how it's driven by the moon. I guess as a species, we definitely have, we can get further away because we've got other distractions of tuning into, what's happening up there, and it doesn't really affect our lives as much anymore, but, I mean, so much relies on it, other than us. But it is pretty epic when we can sort of stop and look and get that feeling ourselves as well.
Yeah, just to see what's going on around us, and recognising that it can trigger stuff in us as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and certainly that eclipse had a lot of power to affect a lot of people.
Yeah, well, we saw you the next day. I think your presentation was like the day after, and everyone in
was.
the room was still absolutely
Yeah.
buzzing from it. You
yeah.
could see it. It was a palpable feeling, you know. It was incredible.
I mean, to come into a room full of people who just experienced that, it was just joy. Everyone was just totally on a high from the whole thing. So, you know, it was a beautiful to be able to share that with everybody and have them share back what they'd gained from it too.
Yeah, picking up on that energy.
Yeah.
When I'll skip through now because you were sort of talking briefly before about the BBC work. How did you then go, obviously chatting with people like Brian Cox and that? I mean, how much fun was that bouncing information off people like that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, Brian's fun.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
You know, he's quite world-renowned. The women all love him to bits.
Yeah.
You know, they all go, oh, whenever they see
They'll
Brian.
swoon over him.
They do. But he's great. I mean, that's kind of his forte, is to present that theoretical physics viewpoint, and to keep the world abreast of that. You know, through the BBC, which is just the most amazing organisation to work with.
Yeah.
You know, they're absolute pros. The ABC were really cool to work with too, but BBC were like next level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they seem to put together some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah.
And it's good because we were saying before, my middle daughter, she's 5.
Yeah.
And, you know, I always had an interest in the stars and planets, just like you say, spending time in the outback in a swag, looking up, just in complete awe. And it wasn't until, we sort of had that understanding of, you know, how the Earth spun and you could see it. But then it kind of, you know, life does its thing, and I guess you lose touch of that a little bit as you move to other things.
Sure, you get distracted.
Yeah.
And then if you can come back to that, you go, oh, yeah.
It's been good. Yeah.
Right.
It's something sparked her interest, my 5-year-old's interest. I think last year at school, they do themes at school. Mm-hmm. And one of the weeks the theme was the planets, and she just grabbed it and ran with it. And the teacher sort of pulled us aside at school pickup, and she said she's really loving this. And she would come home and tell us about what she'd learnt. So it was a nice thing to encourage us to get back into it. And it didn't take me long. I dust off a telescope I bought with points, frequent flyer points years ago, and we started looking back up at the stars again. So it was really nice, and that's a really good little connection for me and my daughter now. And we just love it. She sings a lot of songs on the TV that are, they teach you all about the planets, and they even correct, they self-correct. Like years ago they had a song about Pluto, and they've corrected it, saying that now it's a dwarf planet and it's got moons of its own. And they're always talking about it being a moon in its own right now.
I'm going to dispute all of that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Pluto's a planet.
Yeah. I don't know if I've... we can probably go into that, but I don't think even if I've got the ability to question you about that. But what is that dispute, I guess, between it being a dwarf planet and a planet?
Well, I've been fortunate enough to work with some of the guys who sent the NASA New Horizons mission to Pluto.
Okay.
And they're all totally on board with me.
Yeah.
And I'm on board with them as to the fact of the importance of Pluto in our solar system.
Sure.
To kick Pluto out of the solar system was a vote from the IAU, the International Astronomical Union. They took a vote to kick him out because they discovered a heap of things that were similar to Pluto, just to be a little bit fair to them.
Yeah.
But in that vote, 4% voted to kick him out, 3% voted to keep him. Guess what the other ones did? They said, this is stupid.
Yeah.
We're out. They abstained.
Okay.
So we kicked Pluto out of the club with a 4% vote.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that it's based on...
And what if we took a vote here right now, Aaron? What do you reckon? Do you want to vote Pluto back in?
Oh, I'd love to see Pluto back in.
Beauty. So that's unanimous.
Yeah.
You and I voted him back in. So whether we voted him back in or whether they voted him out makes absolutely no difference at all to Pluto.
To what it actually is. Yeah, taking it away.
Pluto's still going to do what Pluto's always done.
That's right.
And the opinions of humans is just not that important.
Yeah. This little planet far away from it. Well, Cova will be glad to know that because she was quite sad that Pluto was being left out.
You tell her I said.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'll plug her in and she can have a listen.
I said. She'll
be really happy. She definitely was sympathising. She was a bit sad that Pluto.
Oh, there was a lot of stupid things. I mean, to take Pluto out of the textbooks and all that, it's just major expense. I don't know. Somebody made a lot of money out of it.
Sure.
For probably a very stupid reason, I'd say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to spark some more interest or get people talking, because it definitely has done that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the New Horizons mission that went to Pluto, if you see the images, if you Google New Horizons, the images of Pluto are just spectacular.
Yeah.
I mean, they kind of expected just a little ice ball with no features, nothing going on. Nothing could be further from the truth. I mean, the images of Pluto show dark terrain, light terrain, raised up mountains. Pluto's got an atmosphere. We weren't expecting Pluto to have an atmosphere.
Yeah.
So, there's stuff going on Pluto. There's activity going on Pluto.
Yeah.
It's not just some little dead thing. It's there. It's alive.
It's happening, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was only recently, maybe even this week, talking about atmospheres and magnetic fields and how they play a huge part into life on this Earth.
Yeah.
And now they're discovering that it could be happening on other planets. They thought it wasn't possible because of their characteristics, but they're saying that it can happen.
Some planets have more of a magnetic field than the other, but today the KP index, which is a measure of the Earth's geomagnetic field, was up at 8.
Wow.
That's as big as I've seen it for a long time.
Okay.
So we've been getting impacted by CMEs, or coronal mass ejections from the sun, the last couple of days, and there's auroras visible all over the place. They're just, the pictures that are coming up are amazing.
Yeah, even the southern ones have been happening pretty
for
strongly
sure.
now. Yeah.
And so that KP index to be up at 8, I can't remember when I've ever seen it that high before.
Okay.
So this is, it's impacting the Earth's magnetic field.
Yeah.
It's a malleable thing. It pushes it around. There are anomalies where, that energy from the sun, that charged plasma, which is what it is, can impact the Earth. And that has effects like affecting our power grids. If you ever hear about a transformer fire somewhere, it's been induced by the sun.
Yeah, it's pretty scary when you think of the potential of what could happen if it really let rip.
Yeah, for sure. When the sun does let rip, which it will one day, all of our electronic stuff is just going to fry, basically.
Yeah.
That'll be fun.
Yeah, well, I mean, considering how long we've been here for and the potential for, previous catastrophic events that have happened, there's nothing to say that it can't or won't happen again. It's just that we've been here for geologically,
Yeah, well, we're so reliant on that electric grid these days that, and I think the last time it happened, the Carrington event, we had telegraph.
Yeah.
And it fried the solder off the copper connectors and all sorts of things like that. It just took it out. So, it fried our communication network, which was only a telegraph line at the time. But look at our communication network now and see the potential there for catastrophic failure, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, from our friend little sun up there in the sky.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, unreal. Well, yeah, and we are going further down that path, more and more dependent. So, I mean, I'm not sure how you would combat stuff like that. I guess being aware of it and knowing that it's possible.
Yeah.
And then trying to combat it some way, because that would plummet the planet
It's
into some pretty dark places. I think.
Yeah, I mean, there's some places on Earth that won't even notice.
Yeah.
I've spent a bit of time in the Himalayas, and none of those people are going to notice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they'll be fine.
Yeah, and that's there's some pretty cool places to go, not just for the mountain experience, but for that unplugged status, I guess, which is, injuvenating in itself, rejuvenating. So, yeah, cool. That's good. All right, well, I've got some notes and I've been studying a little bit, some crammed in homework.
What do you got, Aaron?
Well, I'm just having a look now. So we've covered a lot of it, which is really good. Actually, you just had your book release for your second book. We've talked a bit about your first book, but we're actually, your talk the other day was on your second book, which was Is the Moon Upside Down?
Is the Moon Upside Down, published by Penguin Random House.
Yeah, came about a bit differently to the first one.
It did. The first one was essentially going to be self-published, and then I had a publisher in Melbourne in Collins Street pick it up and said, I'll publish it for you. So I went, oh, great. And then I called him the next year, a few months later, and said, hey, it's really good, we've got this book happening. Hey, I've got this TV thing going on as well. And he kind of dropped the ball and didn't do any distribution. And in that first series of Stargazing Live for the BBC into London, we were in front of 8 million people.
Wow.
So it would have been really good if he'd been on board and had a book ready to sell all those people. But,
Yeah.
and that's when Space Gandalf came to be as well.
Yeah, right, yeah.
People go, well, why have you called yourself Space Gandalf? And I go, well, I haven't. Somebody else has.
Yeah.
So that the Twitterverse just erupted and went crazy for me, I guess.
Yeah.
I got marriage proposals and people making memes and giving me various names, and the one that stuck was Space Gandalf. And then Brian Cox, on TV, he kind of goes, do you mind if we call you Space Gandalf? I went, I don't care, go for it. So that's where that kind of came from.
Yeah.
So I went from having, I think, 10 people on Twitter and not knowing how to drive it to having 4,500 people in about a minute. And they got this thing called trending on Twitter. And I trended at number 9 and then number 6 and then number 2.
Wow.
And the thing that trended at number 1 at the time was Stargazing Live, which is the show that I was on. Yeah.
Hashtag Space Gandalf.
That's right. So that's where Space Gandalf came from, whether I wanted it to or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You were saying that, the first book, it took all of this work to get it and looking for publishers and thinking how you're going to make it happen. And then pretty much people just offered up, like, how'd you write it like a second book and call it this? And you're like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's it. So, Sophie Ambrose called me from Penguin Random House and said, oh, man, my kids love watching you on TV. Will you write us a book? And it's like, by this time I was pretty relaxed. So it was like, yeah, can we call it this? I went, sure.
Yeah, why not?
So, Is the Moon Upside Down was the title of one of the 5-minute movies I made for the BBC. Yeah. So that's where she pulled that from. And by that time I was going, yeah, no worries. So
cool.
So I ended up getting, the original book that I'd written published by Penguin in 2020.
Yep.
And I was on a surf trip to Cocos Islands on the launch of that. So, I did, I think I was on the project and a few other shows to launch that from
Cocos
Island. Yeah, from the bar at Cocos Island. So the whole bar's in there going, watching the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that was the only place with internet.
Yeah, I think I remember that actually. Because we had friends living over there at the time as well.
Right. Actually, we did one from the barge on Cocos Island as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And surf over there, I think you get surf on the Cocos.
Oh, yeah. That's what you go for.
Yeah.
Well, you actually surf in the morning and kite in the afternoon. So
lovely.
Surf on one side of the island, kite on the other side. So
depending on what the wind's doing.
Happy days.
Yeah. And you've been getting some surf here as well, which is good.
Yeah, I have.
It's been pretty good.
I love this place. It's, dunes is... If we had dunes up in Broome, it'd be like... We'd end up with...
It'd be unreal.
Overpopulated to the max, but...
Yeah, because you only really get the surf up there through cyclone seasons or if you get a cyclone close, right?
Yeah, that's right. A cyclone's our best chance of a surf.
Yeah.
And, we get the occasional winter swell as well, but it's nothing reliable about our surf up there.
Just trying to think of where Broome would be good in the surf because you'd almost have to go inside, wouldn't you, for Broome to... Oh, no, you get on the outside. Just trying to think about... Broome's almost like the opposite peninsula of Exmouth where town's on the other side of it compared to here. And I was trying to get my bearings, Yeah,
it's a south-facing peninsula. It's 10 kilometres long and 4 kilometres wide and 22 kilometres of Cable Beach on one side and Roebuck Bay, which I think is 26 miles across or something like that. There I go, mixing up my kilometres and miles.
Yeah.
I'll do that.
But where's the surf when you get...
Oh, Cable Beach.
Cable Beach, okay.
Yeah, Cable Beach. So it's west-facing beach.
Yeah.
A bit of a north-facing beach down towards Ganthian Point, but on that west-facing beach, that's where we get our...
Lovely.
If we get a swell, that's where it's coming.
That's where it's at. Yeah, we used to live in Darwin for a while, and I think Casuarina was the spot you got surf up there.
Yeah, okay.
A few crocs to dodge as well, which apparently there's been a crocodile here. Unconfirmed sightings.
Yeah, I was talking to my mate Sal today, and she kind of works in that field, and she said, unconfirmed sightings all over the place.
Yeah. Well, man, I think it's been pretty good. I know next for you'll be looking at heading to the Kimberley for the next one. You're not going to be going to... You're going to Mexico for the next year's eclipse?
Oh, great question, Aaron. I don't know yet. I haven't even looked at that one yet. So I've been looking up the 2028 one because I've been talking that one up as well.
Yeah.
Both boats of the True North will be doing that one and I'll be on board there again.
Amazing.
So, we'll raft up a couple of boats and...
Go from there. Yeah, I know a few people from here are already looking up accommodation.
Yeah, or Wyndham, Kununurra.
Yeah.
And, basically take your swag and get out there under the shadow of the moon.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. They, I think a lot of places are saying they're not taking bookings that far ahead.
Well, most of us are not equipped to. I mean, I'm a
Yeah.
tour operator too, and if somebody said, "Can I book for?" and I'd go, "Oh, hang on, I haven't even got this year's one going yet." So,
Yeah.
well, I have got this year's.
Yeah.
You can, I'm about to go home and set up to run this year's stargazing season.
Coming into the dry season, yeah.
Coming into the dry season, so
Yeah.
it's time to go home and slash at the arena.
Yeah.
It'll be, yay high with weeds.
After the wet.
Clean up the car park, mark out the car park,
Yeah.
make sure the road's accessible, make sure all the telescopes are working, whip a team together to
Yeah.
run the shows, and we'll start on the 10th of May and run all the way through till middle of October this year.
Okay.
And we kind of run around the moon cycle,
Yep.
run the nights that are best to run. So there's a bit more than a week leading up to full moon, and including full moon where it's too bright.
Yeah.
And you can only see the brighter stars, and the stargazing's pretty poor, so
Yeah.
we choose to close at that time and
Get it when it's
and get it
more
when it's really good, and,
Yeah.
and gradually educate people when to come to Broome if they want to come stargazing.
Yeah. I devastated. We didn't find it and come and visit when we were up there in September. It would have been amazing.
Yeah.
If I'd have, caught, I think I must have been Googling the wrong things, but if I'd have seen that, I'd have been grabbing the kids straight away and heading up there. But don't worry, we'll be visiting the next time we're up that way.
Great.
It's nice. I like Broome. We hadn't been there in a long time, and when we were sort of first travelling around, I think we went through in 2002 or 2003, and it had been nearly 20 years since we'd been back, but it was still a nice feeling up there.
Yeah, it's paradise, just like Exmouth.
Yeah.
Yeah, two beautiful paradises.
Yeah, absolutely. How does it go with stargazing, and then obviously you're saying you've done some work with the elders, traditional owners and stuff over east. How do you go incorporate that into the stuff you're doing in the Kimberley? Because I know you have like the dark emu through.
Well, the emu's, he's a part of everyone's life.
Yeah.
In Aboriginal Australia for sure.
Yeah.
And he comes in with different versions of stories, which are all kind of related. The Gallara Baloo people up in Broome, Richard Hunter, he's the man who holds that story.
Okay.
At the moment, and I've sat on a sand dune called Dabba Dabba Goon with him many times, listening to the story of Morella, and the story of the Onion Woman and the Fire Woman, and how they came and are now rocks sitting on the beach. But yeah, the story of Morella, he's like a creator god, the emu man who left his footprints all over the Kimberley coast as well. And, we've identified 21 different species of dinosaurs on the Broome coast from their footprints.
Yeah, we did see a few of them while we were up there. That was really cool. The tide was just low enough, yeah.
It's quite amazing for sure.
Yeah, and you speak to any native Australian or traditional owner, and everything comes from sort of space. Like I ask a lot of people,
for sure.
and you ask anyone, where do they come from? And it's like, we're from Pleiades.
Yeah, they'll often point there.
Straight up to the Seven
Sisters. And then
Sisters.
they'll go, that's where I come from, but that's where I'm going over there.
That's right.
Yeah, and then somebody will slap them and say, hey, you're not allowed to talk about that.
Yeah.
So I've had a bit of that as well.
Okay. Yeah, I guess there's great things for discussion and people have their theories on it all, but effectively the realisation that we are part of the universe. We've come from somewhere.
Yeah.
Everything that we're made of and everything that's on this planet is part of the universe. We're not the centre of it.
Yeah.
We're just a tiny part of it, which we've been delving into a bit more lately, explaining it, to the kids. It's really cool.
And they get it naturally.
Yeah.
As you're finding your daughter's, she's got an innate knowing of those planets already.
Yeah. It's very special.
Yeah.
Look, man, I'm not going to keep you any longer. Really appreciate your time coming in as part of your sort of, the taper of your trip now and a bit of a holidays to enjoying Exmouth. I was just going to do a shout out just for your links, anywhere that people can find you, where they want to find you on the socials and that sort of stuff. Sure.
Greg Quicke's Astro Tours on Facebook.
Yep.
And you'll find a bit of a story I've just written about, the last few days of this eclipse. The behind the scenes stuff, I guess, that made it all happen leading up to that eclipse and the feelings about that. So that's on Facebook, Greg Quicke's Astro Tours. On Twitter, it's just Greg Quicke.
Yep.
On Instagram, it's Astro Tours Broome.
Astro Tours Broome, yeah.
So it's all kind of mixed up a bit.
It's good.
When I got on those social medias, it wasn't. That's just the way it
was,
happened. And the website's pretty comprehensive too. astrotours.net is the place to go for bookings. We've got a volunteer program that talks about the best time to come stargazing. There's links to all of my TV shows because, I did 4 series of Stargazing Live with Brian Cox, and that's, 4 series of 3 nights of live television. And then, as you were talking about, that first book, Earth Turning Consciousness, was turned into a TV series called A Stargazer's Guide to the Cosmos. We won 4 awards for that show, Cinematographers Awards, Best Music Awards. I didn't even know it had music, but, so the composer of that music, he gets that award, and I can't remember the other 2, but it was, the crew that did it were just absolutely beautiful, and it came together in a wonderful way, and it's a resource. It is a resource that's being used by schools and lots of people to introduce a lot of the stuff that I introduce to people on a live basis. And that first book, Earth Turning Consciousness, is basically a manual to take people through what I take them through on a live performance. And that TV's 1-hour documentary is there to do the same.
Yeah, we sort of went halves and bought copies of the books the other day, and they forgot to leave the first copy here with me. They ended up taking it back down to Perth. But friend Nikki, she was asking, she sort of already read sort of some of the book, and she's got some questions which I'll take off air for you. But
sure,
it's really great to speak to you again. I think the ease of being able to speak to you like we are, I mean, it's pretty intimidating and daunting speaking to an astronomer. But the fact that, we've sort of caught up a few times, and the ease of you as a person, how well you convey everything. I mean, it's not daunting at all talking to you about these kind of things, even though you've sort of got this, a lot more knowledge about it than the average person. To the fact that I'm even sitting here having a chat with you is just states how easy, what you do and how it comes across. So, much grateful. Thank you.
It's my pleasure, Aaron. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. And if anyone does want to know, I'll put up some notes after the show, but any of the links I'll put in the show notes as well, so people can jump on. Greg Quicke, and it's Quicke as in Quicke, just as a quick reference. Yeah,
Quicke as in fast with an E on the end.
That's right. Yeah.
So my mates call me Quickie.
Yeah, Quickie. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on, Quickie. And I will post everything in the show notes, and we'll have a chat after the show. But for now, we're going to leave it with you. Safe trip back to Broome. Hope you have a great season up there, and I know that we'll definitely be hitting you up for a show when we're up there next.
Beauty. Thanks, Aaron.
Thanks, mate.
Cheers.
Bye.